Rachel, welcome to Podcastina.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you for being here. Can you tell me a little bit about what's been going on with you, what work has been like?
Yeah, it has been a roller coaster of the last oh my God, it's 2025. Holy shit. Basically, we met when I was doing stand-up comedy and I had a comedy spot in West Hollywood. 2020 had to shut that down. But before I shut that down, I started to go on my own transformational journey. And just realizing, like, even though that I was fulfilled in so many aspects of my life, there was still this, it was just still this, emptiness that I felt. And I actually at the time didn't know what the fuck that was, right? But I was trying to fill this void with so many external things. And so I started to really dive into what is this thing? Like why am I there? From the outside there were so many reasons why I should have been satisfied and feeling good, but instead I actually wasn't feeling good, and I would go to numbing and all this other things to drown, trying to numb this void. And so I went on my own transformational journey before the 2020 thing hit. And then 2020 really sent me on just a deep fucking ride, as it did so many other people. Right? Because basically overnight, my identity, all of my identities died, right? Like business owner, comedian, you know, just all of these different identities died. My grandparents, they both passed away within a 6 week time frame. So it's
Oh
like my
no.
grandfather passed away. 5 days later, I shut births down. And then 5 weeks after that, my grandmother passed away. So it was all of a sudden, all of these identity deaths, right? And so the question that kept coming to me is like, who am I without these masks? Like, what is the space behind this? And so the last 5 6 years, I've been diving into revealing just this search of who am I and why am I here? And so it has brought me now to be I'm a relationship coach, and I help people to create the best relationships with themselves and others, because that's something else that I recognize. I didn't have the best relationships, and there was a thing that I never really felt like I quite belonged, or I just wasn't able to be my authentic self, or to share the truth, or all of these aspects. I recognized I wasn't bringing myself fully to them. And being a stand-up comedian was great, because it's you get to curate this image of what people see you as, without that actual intimate connection, right? It's an energy exchange on stage. But then there isn't that deeper rooted connection, and I was longing for something like that. And I just didn't have that in my life. And so now, 5 6 years later, I'm helping people create that relationship with themselves, helping them recognize you don't need all these masks, and what are these masks? And yeah, just a little bit about kind of what I do and how I got here.
That's beautifully put. I really love how you outlined that all of these things that were our identity markers, the titles, right? The job, the relationships that you had where you're like, I'm a granddaughter, that goes away. I'm a business owner, that goes away. I'm a comedian, that went away. And I remember spiraling too and being like, oh my God, I just lost my primary outlet of not being able to go up and do stand up, and also being, and I think you can probably relate to this, like I'm pretty social too. So not being able to connect and get out and charge my battery with social interactions, plus the fear state that we were all in, it's just such a good way of putting it that like all these identity things go away, because I think sometimes we put a lot of stock into oh, I'm this person. This is my title. This is my occupation. And when that leaves you, you're like, well, fuck, now what? Now what am I going to hang my hat on personality wise?
Totally. Oh my God, 100%. And it is like, it is, it's something that everybody fucking does, right? We have worth, right? Everyone has the same amount of worth. Like, regardless if you are Mother Teresa or a serial killer, like, everybody has the same amount of intrinsic worth. We are all equal. And yet at the same time, we have this game here on earth where it's like, oh, we start to look for things outside of ourselves to give us that worth. But the whole fucking game, like, the universe is like, no, bitch, you have that worth. Like, it's already within you. And we're like, where the fuck is it? And we literally look at like all of these things, trying to fill that void, trying to like feel worthy. And we can do that in so many ways, right? We could do that in like the cars, the career, the money, the girls, the guys. We can do that with yeah, just like getting it from people, getting acceptance, like all of these other things. But it's like coming back to that actual the truth of who you are, which is like you're worthy no matter what the fuck you do, no matter how much money is in your bank account, how much like how many friends you have or how many Instagram followers you have. You are worthy regardless of all of those things.
It's so hard to actually feel that. And I think it's important to point out, right? It doesn't even take some kind of global pandemic or event that cascades and affects everybody. It happens daily to somebody will lose their job or a relationship will fall apart. And my therapist calls it the worthiness wound,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like that's the thing that gets brought up the most with people. And it's just so hard, I think, to build that from within. So, with the work that you've been doing, what have you been finding is effective for people to treat that worthiness wound?
Yeah, I mean, so basically, with the worthiness wound, right? That is like self-esteem. And you can't have, and it's like self-esteem is the esteem of yourself, right? And so something that I take my clients into is like boundary work. Boundary work is so fucking important to have healthy self-esteem, right? And so, like, just a quick thing that I take my clients through is, and this is, I got this from my mentor and teacher, Terry Real. He he has a great example about, there, like, the example is if you look at an orange, right? There is the external, peel, but then there's also the white part that like holds the orange together. And so that is like, that's like us as a human, right? And I want you to put your hand out and your hand close to your heart, like that. Okay, so this is the external boundary. This is like the orange peel part of us. And this is the external boundary, and we decide what we want to let in and what we want to keep out, right? If somebody comes up to you and says, like, you're not funny, that would go splat. And you're like, bitch, I'm a comedian. Like, I know what funny is. And so that would hit your external boundary and you wouldn't let that come in, right? And so people walk around though and they're very porous. When somebody doesn't have a healthy external boundary, they are absorbing every fucking bit of information from the earth, from other humans. So an external boundary is very important. And this boundary isn't a wall. That's a very important distinction. This boundary is a thing that you get to put up around yourself. And so if somebody came up to you after a set and said, hey, you're so funny, and that set didn't really hit because of X, Y, and Z, what you could do is have that boundary up and you would decide what you want to take in. Oh, I'm going to actually take in some of that information. Like, you're right. That joke didn't hit. What can I do better for the next set? Whatever that is, right? But you have this external boundary so you're not taking everything in. If it's some, like, I don't know, if some homeless man on the street was like, go fuck yourself, you wouldn't take that in, right? That would go splat. And
Mhm.
also, this external boundary is so important when we are in relationships, when we're in a relationship with friends, our parents, our family, our intimate lovers. we also give a fuck about what they reflect back to us. So if somebody came up and said, "Hey Rachel, that didn't what you said yesterday actually didn't feel good for me. Like that hurt my feelings." I would be like, "Oh my god, I'm going to take that in." Like I'm going to reflect on why I said that. I'm going to apologize. Like of course I don't want you to feel bad. And so that's the external boundary. The internal boundary is like that white part of the orange rind, right? This is the thing that keeps the containment of the orange. This is the boundary of containing your own shit, right? And we all know boundaryless people who just fucking say whatever the fuck they want. Most of them are comedians or they're homeless dudes in Hollywood without pants on, jacking off on the street corner, you know? And
Sometimes
so
they're
this,
both.
and sometimes they're both. Exactly. And this is the containment part of like, I know that, like, girl, we have over 60,000 thoughts a day. And most of those thoughts, we are fucking repeating those thoughts over and over and again. And we can get into that in a moment of where those come from. But the containing boundary is how am I going to affect those around me? Like, if I say this, how is it going to affect somebody that I'm speaking to? How can I protect the world from me? And the external boundary is how can I protect myself from the world, right? And so the center of health in relationships is being both protected and connected at the same time. So it's not walls, right? Because if you have walls up on either side of your boundary, you're not actually you're protected as fuck, but you're not actually connected to anyone. And if you don't have any fucking boundaries, you're connected, but that's a meshment. And that actually leads to unhealthy relationships because you are not protected at all. And so I would say that the best way of creating healthy self esteem and recognizing your worth is recognize that it is literally already within you. It's intrinsic. You are born with it. Just because you are on this fucking planet, you are worthy. And then also, it is a moment to moment practice with yourself. It is about having your boundaries up, deciding because also your fucking life and your relationships are your biosphere. They are your environment. If you are not containing yourself and you're saying whatever the fuck you want, regardless of how your partner is going to hear it or receive it, or regardless of how your coworkers are you going to receive it, your biosphere is going to be poisoned with that. So that's why it's so important to literally use containment and then also protecting yourself from what's coming in and not just being so porous and boundaryless and letting everything come at you and cry, because that's going to create so much fucking suffering, right? That's like so much of the suffering is not healthy boundaries of like you're just taking in everything. So yeah, that's what I'm seeing a lot of.
I really appreciate the distinction between the external and the internal boundary. I personally have never thought of it as two separate boundaries, but that breakdown makes so much sense.
Yeah.
How does someone recognize that they have an issue with boundaries? Because I think the people that need to hear this the most are the ones who don't see that. And I think while it's a little more obvious that the external boundary needs to be stronger, and that I think we all kind of have at least heard, oh, don't take in the criticism if you don't want this person's life, then why would you take criticism from them or feedback from them? Or we understand that maybe somebody being really unkind to us is projection too. Like that's kind of, I think, a more established idea. But that internal boundary of oversharing, how does someone know that they're bad at that and how do they start working on it?
Yeah, a great question. I think I would look at your relationships. I would really look at your relationships and I would ask yourself and be really fucking real. Like, how are my relationships with myself and with the people around me? If I am sitting here, because we also get to have those boundaries with different parts of ourselves, right? Like, um, so there's a lot of ways we could go with this, but essentially, I would first look at the relationship that you have with yourself. Like, that is actually the most fucking important relationship that you can have and cultivate, is the relationship with yourself. Like, how do you talk to yourself when you're by yourself? When you're off that stage, like, and you're at home all of a sudden alone, like, how are you talking to yourself? How are you relating to yourself? Can you sit there by yourself and not have to like reach for tobacco or weed or alcohol? Like, are there things, are there aspects of your life where you are going to like, where you need somebody else there, or you need food or whatever it is to numb out whatever is actually going on inside of you? And so that's like the most, like, I would say that that's the number one factor of like, how do you feel when it's just you around, right? And this is the biggest, this is, I would say that this is the biggest struggle for so many people, right? Because the thing is, we have, so I'll talk about that first. We have all of these different parts of us. We have all these different parts of us, and we can look at this from a lot of different angles. Like Richard Schwartz created internal family systems. This is parts work, right? And so essentially, we have this, we could talk about it as like the capital S self. This is the part of us that is confident, that's courageous, that's calm, that's connected, that's creative. That's that part of us. This is the part of us when we can connect to our prefrontal cortex, taking a deep breath, and we're actually living out of the present moment, right? That is that part of us. But the thing is, so many of us are not living in the present moment. And that is where all of my work with trauma and working with the body and somatic work comes in. Because as a child, we are from basically, attachment styles were created from 0 to 2. Like, you're literally cooking in your mama's belly, developing attachment styles. You know, that's how young it comes in. And then from 0 to 7, we are in basically a hypnosis state. We're like a sponge absorbing every fucking bit of information. We are boundaryless when we're kids, right? We don't have a sense of self. So we're literally absorbing all of this information around us, even unspoken shit, right? Kids are so sensitive to energy. And so literally you're absorbing how your mom talks to herself, how your dad talks to himself. You're absorbing how they're talking to each other, how they're relating to you. And as a kid, you don't have, right? You're boundaryless, and you also don't have a sense of self, and you're very egocentric. You don't have a way of saying, oh, that's about mom, that's about dad, that has nothing to do with me. So everything that you're absorbing, you make it your fault, right? That's why, like, just a very common example of parents getting divorced. The kid automatically assumes, this is my fault. If I only didn't cry as much, or if I was just a good kid, right? And so you're literally creating, as a child, all of these belief systems, all of these neural pathways in your brain are being created. And so maybe you had a sibling that didn't like you, and so like that was like a deep core belief of mine of like not belonging, not being lovable. And so I had, for like, I mean, fucking 30 plus years, this unconscious belief system and this neural pathway that was created that's like, I don't belong. And so this is deep in your subconscious mind, right? And this is also, your unconscious mind is your body. Your body is a living library of every big T, little t trauma that has ever happened to you. These neural pathways get like basically become super networks, super highways in your brain. And the way that I like to describe it is it's like lenses, right? So over time, as kids, we make up a belief, and then we wear these lenses. And so everybody's walking around not actually seeing reality for what it is, but they're looking at reality through the lens of their belief systems, of their paradigms that were programmed into them since childhood. And so the best thing that you can do for this is become aware, right? Become aware of like what are the driving forces in your life? What are these driving beliefs that are creating your reality? Because the lenses that we wear, these lenses essentially, you're scanning your environment, and this is the reticular activating system.
Mhm.
And so if you have a lens, right, one of the lenses that you're wearing is I'm not enough or I don't belong. Your brain does this to save energy. Your brain's amazing, but it does this thing where it's literally scanning for things that you already know. And your ego is constantly scanning your environment to confirm the information that's in your fucking system. So if I have a lens that says I don't belong, my reticular activating system is going to be scanning my environment for all the ways that I don't belong. And what also, that frequency is also pulling in situations, people, and things that recreate that same feeling of not belonging. It confirms it because I'm pulling it in. And so awareness is like the first fucking thing to do. And how do you become aware? Slow the fuck down. Start meditating. Like, shut the fuck up and become silent. And start to practice being the observer of what the fuck is going on in your mind, right? Slow down, get silent, practice sitting in the observer seat. And there's so many different ways of meditating, but you can go on YouTube and figure that shit out. Also journaling, reflecting of like what's happening in my life. Where was I triggered today? Where wasn't I showing up? Where did I withhold my truth? Because triggers are a best indication of unresolved shit of the past, right? We get triggered because it's our body being like, "Oh, that reminds me of childhood," right? And so our triggers are our teachers. And so we can really start journaling about different triggers throughout the day. I feel like I'm kind of going a little off topic here, but
No, not at all. Not at all. Because I had a question that truly is what we're talking about now, which is how does a person get better acquainted with their inner world? Because I think sometimes you think you know yourself, you think you know your thought patterns, and it's not until you really sit down, as you're saying, and meditate, and there's so much resistance. And it's hard to do, and it's hard to get over this kind of lump that like I've personally experienced. I got lucky. I think it was, I don't remember, 2017 or 2018. I had a job, like a part-time job at a dedicated like meditation studio, basically. And so I got really familiarized with the practices, and I would do these classes, right, where we had these teachers who had so much valuable information. It was all sorts of different meditation classes too. It was like just mindfulness classes, and then it was like Kundalini and breathwork classes and stuff. And it was so hard. And I just did a breathwork class for the first time in a while on Friday. And that first 15 minutes is impossible. Like it is just where all the dread is and where there's so much friction. And it feels like it's taking an hour to get past that
Mhm.
first 10, 15 minutes. And
Yeah.
on the other side of that is then where you're starting to get past it, and then time almost stops, and you
Yes.
go into this like almost haze where time goes away, and that's where stuff really starts to come up, and that's where that internal world really shows. But I've kind of been myself like a little bit. I've had this idea that your meditation practice is only as good as your level of self-awareness. So I think you can't just do it in a vacuum. My theory is that there has to be some kind of outside influence too, whether that's through therapy or mentorship or 12-step program. I think there needs to be like a little bit of feedback from an unbiased source as well. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I love that. I've been a breathwork facilitator for the last 5 years now, and breathwork is incredible, right? Because when we push ourselves into the discomfort, right? Breathing in breath work, I know people are like, it's just fucking breathing. Like you do it without even thinking about it. But when you are actually intentionally breathing, and there's certain ways of breathing, like deep belly breaths, right? Like that's so unnatural and it's actually very uncomfortable. And as human beings, we fucking hate discomfort. Like
Mhm.
we try to do anything to like not be to not be uncomfortable. And this is why comedians are so fucking awesome, because they are constantly moving into places of discomfort, right? And I think comedians are so incredible for that, because it's like it's never comfortable performing, right? There's always that like there's always like yes, there's excitement, but there's also nerves. And so it's beautiful that like comedians get to practice moving into the discomfort on a regular basis. And I think that helps us expand our capacity to be in uncomfortable situations. And at the same time, yeah, I think having real, like, because I mean, people can be incredible comedians, but they can have absolute shit relationships, right? And so I would say that I mean, I've been now in the coaching space for the last 6 years, and I've been also I've also hired so many different coaches to work with, and it has helped me um, grow as a person and in every aspect of my life, like 100 million times over, you know? And because I have someone else diving in and actually holding up a mirror, but then holding a very safe space for me to explore what the fuck is going on in here, for me to explore these deep wounds. Like I take my clients into deep trauma work, into inner child work and somatic work. And yeah, like I practice that on a daily basis with myself. And I also have help. I have somebody who I don't think I could have gotten to where I am today if I didn't have somebody reflecting back and holding space while and guiding me into these deeper layers, right? Because if we want to tie this back into somatic work, um, I love this analogy. One of my teachers and mentor, Alexi Panos, she is an incredible coach, but she has an example of your somatic body is like a pool. And every trauma, big T or little t trauma that happened to you is like a blow up volleyball. And so as you're like your body, as you're moving through this pool, and now you know you're in your 30s, you have all of these fucking blow ups in the pool, and any single time you touch one, and the whole pool is like fucking filled with these volleyballs, right? And every time you touch one, it brings up a trigger, because that is like your somatic body and your nervous system, it's holding all of your trauma. And that's why somatic work and breath work and release work is so important, because it's like having someone guide you into picking up each one of these volleyballs, deflate, like looking at it, healing at it, feeling it, teaching your body that it's safe to be with this emotion, because things get stored in our body that we felt like we couldn't fully process it, right? And so we pick it up, we look at it, we do work with it, we sit with it, we teach our body that it's safe, and then we pick up each one and then we start deflating it. And so the more somatic trauma work you do, all of a sudden, like, yeah, you have all of these smushed up volleyballs, but you can move easier through life without like getting super fucking triggered, or, right? Like the trigger is still there, but there's more space between you and the trigger, because it's like, oh, okay. Like um this example, I was my partner and I, we were out to dinner with a couple of friends, and I was getting so triggered at this one couple, and I recognized I was journaling about it, and I was like, why am I getting so triggered about this one couple? And I realized that this couple was celebrating themselves. Like they were celebrating each other. And then I was like, oh my God, this is a trigger, because I'm feeling like my partner doesn't celebrate me in this way. And so it was like a part of me that felt jealous, but it was also a part of me that felt hurt. And so it's like looking at the triggers around us to see like, oh, what do I actually really want here? What's missing? How can I be with this? Instead of like, that's what the work does. Instead of like judging the fuck out of the couple, and like that might be the first thing, but it's like, oh, something must be underneath this. Like where do I have like an unmet need, or what is this trying to tell me about how I'm showing up or my own life, right? Everything is a mirror. And this is, I'm going to say this. This fucking annoys me so much in like the healing space when people say that you attract what you are. Yeah, I fucking hate that so much. Anyone who says that can go suck a dick. Like, and I'm not kidding you. I get so fucking pissed because it's like, no, you don't fucking attract what you are. You actually attract unhealed, unprocessed wounds. So, like, if you had a wound, a betrayal wound when you were a child, and you might have like created a lens, right? And I've gone through this. I had a lens where I had a betrayal wound. I had a lens where like I can't trust men. And a couple years ago, I attracted a man into my life where literally like there was a lot of cheating and gaslighting and manipulation. And so I attracted him into my field because I had a wound there that said, I don't trust men and all men cheat. And so my reticular activating system was scanning my environment for that exact thing. And what happens? Oh, I pull this man in who looks like a pretty package, and then, revealed later, it's like, oh my God, okay. Because there's a part of me that was running this narrative. And this is called like reenactment theory. We pull these things into our life again and again until we heal that thing. Because there's a part of us that's pulling that in so that we can experience it again, to like get the love that we didn't get the first time, or to heal that part of us. When really it's like, oh, okay, I actually get to like, if you keep attracting men who are cheating, like, how can I actually heal that within myself? How can I create trust and safety within myself first? So that way, when like the red flags start coming at you, you'll fucking know and you'll end it, right? And so, again, I think I'm a little caffeinated right now, so I forget.
No, it's good. I want to stay on this, but I want to zoom out just for one thing because I think it's really easy for people like us who've been involved in healing journeys, as silly as term may sound sometimes. I
Yeah.
think I want to just take a beat to define what is somatic work because I don't know that that's like common knowledge.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. I was going on a road trip with my dad last year, and they put on a podcast. And to me, it was like such an incredible podcast. And my dad was like, they're not fucking saying anything. Like, it's like, it's a different language, right? And so that's so true. So somatic work, soma is like mind body connection, and somatic work is like of the body. And, and I don't know how deep you want me to get into that, but essentially, like your body, I said this earlier, but it might be a little bit too whatever, but your body is a living library of your body is your unconscious mind. Your body is a living library of every big T and little t trauma that you experience. You don't recreate trauma, you relive it. Okay,
Mm.
I think Gabor Mate says that. You relive trauma. That's why, like, I mean, this is such a common example, but if a Vietnam vet is walking down the street and a car exhaust goes off, that guy hits the ground, or he's ready to fight, or he like is trembling through his whole body because he's reliving the shit that happened in war, right? You actually relive trauma. Your partner stop, like if we're looking at attachment styles and you're anxiously attached, you have an abandonment, you have fear of abandonment. So if your partner starts to pull away, you have this whoosh of like and it feels like you are getting left, you are going to die, you are going to get abandoned. And if we want to look at it through the attachment thing, like you as a child, you were emotionally abandoned in some way. Like maybe you didn't have an emotionally available parent. Um, and so this abandonment wound is literally in your body, and you start to feel this whoosh of like, oh my God, I'm gonna die. Because as a kid, if your parent is not looking at you and giving you attention and love, you literally would fucking die. And that's not even an exaggeration. There was, I think it was in the 70s, all of these babies were dying in orphanages. And they invited this psychologist to study what the fuck was going on. And what was happening is the babies were getting fed, they had shelter, but they weren't being spoken to. They weren't being touched. They weren't being held. They weren't being like connected with. And all of these babies were dying because like their needs, their food, shelter, water, all of those needs were being met. But the connection part, the holding, the physical touch, somebody actually energetically loving them, these babies would die. So when somebody's like, yeah, my parents were emotionally unavailable, like like that's not that big of a deal. Actually, it is. And so when you feel that like that whoosh in your body, it's this younger part of you being like, holy shit, I'm gonna die because my partner is pulling back. And something that my mentor and teacher always says, Terry Real, he says, adults don't get abandoned. Adults get left, but they don't get abandoned. A child gets abandoned because a child can literally die from abandonment. That's what the fear that comes up in the body. But as an adult, you get left. You don't get abandoned. But that's why it's so important for us to do this work to really understand all of our parts. And if we want to talk about, did that answer the somatic question?
It did, yeah, that it's just the modality of doing therapy in your body versus, let's say, just talk therapy.
Right. And for me, well, not, I know, I'm not sorry to say this. I did talk therapy for fucking 7 years and it didn't do shit. I
Mhm.
was a victim. I stayed in my story. I would just come into therapy and just fucking talk and be in my head and not actually feel my feelings, but just talk about everything that was happening. And I was reinforcing all of these stories, all of these narratives. And so for me, I'm sure this is just my own personal thing. For me, talk therapy didn't do fucking shit. It wasn't until I actually started to do somatic work, to do actual like deep trauma work, inner child work, and release work and breath work and all of these different modalities, that actually I started to see shifts and changes within myself and then changes within my relationships. And so the way that I work with my clients is like, yes, top down, but also like bottom up approach. Like, yes, head for sure. We get to like intellectualize things and I do parts work. And then it's about also bringing in the body, bringing in emotions, getting really in touch with like the different parts of ourselves, right? Because if going back to what I was saying a moment ago, if this is why it's so important to understand what parts of us are being ignited moment to moment, right? So if your partner is pulling back and you have that whoosh of like that fear of abandonment, it's like, oh my gosh, okay, in this moment, my inner child is activated right now. And Terry Real calls this, he splits it in between the adaptive child and the wise adult. This also is Pia Melody's work, but the adaptive child is this part of us that is young. right? It's a young part. It's like 7, 8, 9, 10. And this part of us is like our personality. It's the adaptive strategies that we created in our as a kid. And so this part of us is not relational. It actually is very it's egocentric, and it's a very contracted part of us. It's like the part of us that gets triggered and then reacts to the trigger. It's very black and white thinking. It's very like, oh, if somebody's gonna act like this now, it's always gonna be like that. It's a very like fixed mindset part of us. And then our wise adult self, which we get to moment come back to. This is where like this part of us lives in our prefrontal cortex. And our wise adult self is very nuanced. It's very like zoom out to 30,000-foot view thinking. It's slower, it's more present. And that's why it's so important when we do get triggered, pause, take a breath. If you are in a relationship with somebody and you notice you're super fucking triggered and you're about to say something that you're going to regret, take a fucking time out. Go for a walk. Take 3 breaths. Tell your partner, "Hey, I actually can't talk right now. I'm very triggered. Like, let me go calm down." Take for a quick walk. Turn your prefrontal cortex on, right? This is the part of you that's relational, that actually gives a shit about the relationship, that recognizes like, oh, this is my biosphere. If I say this thing to my partner, I'm going to poison my biosphere. So I'm not going to say that thing. I'm literally going to like regulate myself and go for a walk. And all of these things come with practice and actually like understanding who the fuck is talking right now,
Yeah, who's in
right?
charge?
Who's in charge? That's like one of the biggest questions I'm constantly asking myself when I'm talking to my clients. Like, which part of them is communicating right now? And when people are triggered as fuck, it's like, okay, this is their adaptive child.
Mhm.
Like, and so, yeah, sorry, I kind of went on a tangent again.
No, that's okay because I want to get into more of the attachment style. Like, there's so much science and proof behind how legitimate attachment work is. And I'm wondering if you've encountered, just my own curiosity is there like a big difference in attachment styles with men and women? I mean, I know there's like a spectrum, of course, but just in general.
I wouldn't, I mean, I don't, for me in my experience and the couples that I've worked with and the men, because I work with both men and women can have like, can identify themselves. I don't like saying like, I am whatever. I am anxious. I am avoidant. I am anxious avoidant or like whatever. I like to, no, I don't actually, because both can be either one. And it just depends on it just all of so attachment styles are literally was created during like that 0 to 2. That's what some studies say, that it was actually created when you were super fucking young. And I think also we tend to have one that's like a baseline, right? If we're not securely attached, and secure attachment comes from like having securely attached parents. And no, who the fuck had parents who were regulated, and like I don't know, I have not come across someone who grew up securely attached.
Neither
That
am
is,
I.
yeah, I am like, if y'all out there, please fucking hit me up because I would love to like talk to you. But I don't think a single goddamn soul, like, especially just, because it's a generational thing, right? And so, if you grew up with, there's definitely different ways of coming about this, right? So we've got anxiously attached, and that's typically when either you would get love and attention and connection sometimes, but it was very inconsistent. So your nervous system got very dependent on this inconsistency of love and attention. So much of the like, so then all of a sudden when that love goes away or that connection goes away, your nervous system is wired to cling. It's wired to literally be like, oh, I'm getting abandoned again. Like this, I'm going to do whatever the fuck I need to do to get back into connection with this person. And that's like the anxious attachment. The avoidant attachment, there's two types of avoidance. There's type 1 love avoidant, where you grew up in a very emotionally unavailable household. Nobody was emotionally intimate. And like emotions were very yuck, very wet. Nobody talks about that. Like, no, 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 no. And that's type 1 love avoidant. Type 2 love avoidant is when you grew up with a very intrusive parent, a
Mhm.
very boundaryless parent, where you had a parent that like basically clung the fuck onto you. And you had, like, when I work with my clients and I have a type 2 love avoidant, it's like the bigger the intrusion, the bigger the fucking wall, right? I dated a man who um, a few years ago who had a mother who was a drug addict and who would call still to this day blacked out on pills, and he had a massive wall up because he had to have that wall to keep himself safe. He had to build up some sort of protection to get out of this like energy. And so those are, and then obviously they're securely attached. They're securely attached, and we want to come back to that time and time and time again. And it's a practice. It is a practice. All of this shit is moment to moment work, moment to moment. This isn't a day to day thing. It's not a week to week thing. It's a moment to moment thing, right? If yeah, it's moment to moment. And I don't know if if you have any questions about that, but
Yeah, definitely. Because I think I don't know how much can be done ever to like take that off, to peel off whatever your primary attachment style is. So if you know you're anxious and
yeah.
something within your relationship is starting to bring that up for you, how do you, number one, spot it? Number two, put space away from it and move towards the healthier, more secure type behavior? Like, how do you identify it and be like, oh, I'm being the problem right now. I know this is my insecure attachment coming up. How do I then step back and give myself space and like recover from it?
Yeah, yeah, you can't. You're fucked. No, joking, joking, mate. So if you notice like you are in a relationship or even in a friendship, right? Because anxious attachment can come up in friendships, but typically they're most highlighted in intimate relationships because intimate relationships most mirror how we grew up, right? And so, and also, it's like we're wearing all those lenses, right?
Mhm.
So I in the past I had definitely like anxious attachment is something that I would identify with, and I don't like to say I'm like anxiously attached, but there is a part of me that has anxious attachment. And so when that comes up, when I have that like that fear of abandonment, right? If my partner is pulling away or takes like a while to respond, then it's like, okay, in this moment, I can choose to allow this. There's a few things that you can do. Um, in this moment, I can literally choose to let this part just fucking overtake me, right? And Richard Swartz, but we don't want that because it is literally like you're letting basically a fucking 7, 8 year old drive. Would you ever let a 7 and 8 year old drive your fucking car around with you in the passenger seat? No, that is fucking dangerous, and
Mhm.
you are gonna crash. And so like take the Terry Reels does this all the time. Take those sticky hands off the steering wheel and lovingly put that part of you in the back seat. A 7 year old does not have should not be driving the vehicle of your life. because it is going to get so messy and it is going to be so fucking painful, right? You are going to get into an accident. So that's why Richard Schwartz calls this untangling. You untangle from this part of you that has this insecure attachment. But this is why it's so important to become aware and conscious of what the fuck is going on moment to moment in your body, because you can't do any of this shit unless you are conscious of what's actually happening, right? Because these programs just take over. So that's why, like, moment to moment, you have to be awake and aware of, like, holy shit, I feel like I'm dying. And be curious, like, okay, let me take a deep breath in. Let me connect to my wise adult self, like the part of me that's curious, the part of me that's calm, the part of me that's connected and creative. And let me get really fucking still and curious about this part of me that feels like it's gonna die. So let me separate, right? Untangle from this part. And a way that we can do this is literally giving this part a name. Like, hey, anxious Rachel, or hey, nervous Nelly, or hey, little Rachel, or whatever. And you literally talk to this part. What do you need from me right now? You're not trying to fix this part. You're not trying to take away these feelings. What you're doing in this moment is you're actually teaching your body that it's safe for you to feel whatever the fuck you're feeling. That's actually the biggest thing I want, like, people to hear, is like, you're not trying to fix anything. You're not trying to be perfect or take it away. You're teaching your body and you're teaching this younger part of you that it's safe for you to feel this way. You're not going to die, love. And also, I'm not trying to take this away from you, because this small part of you feels like you're going to die. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to step into my wise adult self and I'm going to hold this part of me. And I'm going to say, you can feel any way you want to. I'm going to be right here with you. Like, think about talking to these parts like you would a child, right? You wouldn't yell at this child and be like, shut the fuck up or stop feeling like that, right? Like, unless you like, I'm sure a lot of people talk to their kids like that. You
Mhm.
should probably stop, because this is in the world and all these badass people, bad people, not badass.
Mhm.
And so you talk to these parts like you would a young kid that you love, and just say, hey, I am right here. You can feel anything you're feeling, but I just want you to know you're not alone. I got you. I am right here and I'm not going anywhere. And you literally start to create a relationship with yourself, with these parts of you. And you actually start to commit to having a better relationship, to feeling better in your body, because you're teaching your body, oh my God, I'm not trying to push this emotion away, or I'm not trying to shame myself or criticize myself for feeling the way that I am, right? I'm not trying to shame myself or wrong myself for any of this stuff. I'm learning how to be with it. I'm learning to teach my body that it's safe for me to feel whatever it is. And that grows your nervous system capacity. That allows you to be with more. And then a second thing is, if you are with your partner, and let's say, again, another example, if you have a anxious attached and your partner is typically avoidant, and your partner, you guys get into a fight and your partner walks out of the room, and it's again that feeling of abandonment. Oh my God, they're leaving, right? And then in that moment, again, I've been studying with Terry Real the last couple of years, so I'm gonna mention him a lot. He's like one of the best couples therapists in the world. He's amazing, and an incredible mentor and teacher. But his thing is, it's an abundance practice, because
Mm.
in that moment you believe that your partner holds all of the abundance in the world. And so if they're walking away, they're also walking away with all the love, all the connection, all the warmth. And then there's a part of you that's like, holy fuck, like, I that person has all of the abundance. I'm good, and so all of a sudden, and this is like a love dependent sort of view, is like, oh, I source all of my love and everything from this person. But the practice is actually recognizing that you are abundant in every moment, moment to moment to moment. You are love. You get to be and remind yourself, like, oh, wait, in this moment, I'm breathing. I am here. I am safe. I actually like approve of me. I am secure. Nobody's like fucking, chasing me right now. And everything that I need to be in control in this moment is in control. Like, I'm safe. I'm good. And you're teaching yourself that actually all of the abundance that you think comes from something outside of yourself is actually already within you. And so these are just like different practices that you can do um, to create a healthier relationship with yourself moment to moment, because it's like, dude, pain is inevitable, right? This is like something, you're gonna fucking feel pain here on earth. Like, that is part of the human experience. Is we come down, we're gonna experience pain. And like, wouldn't it be so fucking boring if we didn't have all of this stuff that we had to like move through, right? If like, think about it as like a video game. If there weren't any bad guys or hurdles or anything, it would be the most fucking boring ass video game ever. So it's like, yeah, okay, so we signed up for this pain, but the suffering comes when we choose to just stay on the same goddamn level every fucking year of our life, and we don't decide to grow, and we don't moment to moment decide a new fucking thing. Well, not even like 20, 30 years ago, they thought that our brain was hardwired, but psych, it's not. Like,
There's
we
hope.
there's hope. Our brain has neuroplasticity. We get to create new neural pathways. So that's why this shit is moment to moment work, right? Like, when you notice your mind, and this is something else, is like your mind creates so much suffering, so much unnecessary suffering. I think also we have like, as like a society, we have an addiction to suffering, because we get so addicted to these chemicals, whether or not you recognize it. If you are suffering a lot in your life, I did. Um, and I still get to notice when I'm in these suffering patterns, because our brain is so addicted to certain chemicals. And so, but it's like moment to moment recognizing, okay, what is my brain saying right now? Oh, well, that's actually not a helpful thought in this moment. I'm actually going to choose to think a different thought, or I'm going to choose to take action anyways, right? And yeah, I think I keep rambling, but go
No,
ahead.
it's okay. But there's so much to it. And it's like in what you were saying, it circled back to the beginning of the conversation, the worthiness wound. And it's such a great analogy to think of the steering wheel, right? The sticky hands, like you wouldn't let the child drive, but you would also kindly and compassionately, hopefully, unless you're a piece of shit, put the child in the back seat and be like, I'm here for you. It's okay. Let me take over. I'm the adult. I have the driver's license. But I do
Yes.
want to think on, because I think I've maybe had some tendencies, things that I've analyzed and been like, oh, that must mean I'm anxiously attached. But sometimes it's just my hypersensitivity recognizing that a relationship is about to end. And so instead of maybe accepting that or being the one to take control of things, I'll like turn into just this like meek little version of myself and be like, oh, what can I do to fix this? And I wonder if, let's say you're one type of attachment style and you can really identify that the person that you're in a relationship with is a totally different one. Is that a sign of straight up incompatibility, or can you work around it and be with someone who's like the polar opposite?
It depends, because it's like, how willing are you to do the work, right? Like, if neither of you guys are willing to do the work, or just one of you guys are willing to do the work, then you get to really sit. So this is also ties into self-worth, right? I keep going back to this example, but a couple years ago, I was with this guy who was very like super avoidant. There was, and um, during our relationship, my hair was falling out. I was anxious to the point where like I could not focus. And I just kept thinking, oh, this is all. I got way too much into like the oh, I'm learning so much about myself. I'm actually like this is all coming. I got way too fucking whatever about it. And I was like, oh, I'm learning all of these things. Oh, I'm really like anxiously attached and I'm learning about that. And I get to like learn all of these lessons. And what was actually going on is he was like lying and gaslighting and manipulating me and cheating. And my body was feeling that. But I was so love dependent that I was literally sourcing my self worth from him. And a lot of men source, and this is not everyone, but a lot of men source their worth, extrinsic worth, from like jobs, money, cars, like things, right? A lot of women source their worth from how much attention am I getting? How are my relationships? And so I was outsourcing my sense of worth onto a man, onto him. And so every time that he would pull back, it would literally, I would like have so much anxiety come up. And granted, my body was also telling me, "Hey, Rach, get the fuck out of there." Like that's not right. So it's if I was in the place where I'm at now, where it's like I know my worth, I know actually exactly what I want, and what I want is a secure man. And when this push pull, hot cold dynamic starts coming up, I'm not available for that. I'm just not. And I get to be very fucking clear with what I want. And like the universe is always listening to us. It's always listening. What are you saying yes to? What are you saying no to? Right? If you get into a relationship where someone is giving you a push pull, hot cold dynamic, is that actually what you want? Is that what you want to say yes to? And I'm not saying that like as soon as your partner starts to get hot, cold, whatever, but it's like, okay, if that starts to come up in your dynamic and it's really bringing up your wounds and you start to feel like anxious and like I can't like relax into this relationship, is that what you want? B, have you brought this to your partner? Have you decided to be vulnerable and say like, hey, I notice when you pull back or not answer me for a couple hours, I notice like I feel some anxiety. I'm curious, like, would you be open to like, texting me within whatever? And at the same time, I want you to also be really fucking real with yourself. Are you using a relationship to soothe your own nervous system? Right? If you need your partner, I'm using that same relationship a couple years ago, but I felt so insecure in the relationship. I would ask him like, "Hey, can you please text me every morning? If I'm not sleeping over, can you text me good morning?" And I literally would get so anxious if he didn't text me. And it's like, girl, like I wish like, like me now, I'm like, Shouty, actually this is you get to self-soothe. That's like the biggest thing with anxious attached people. It's like, stop outsourcing your own power. Stop outsourcing the ways that you can actually soothe yourself. Like you're actually avoiding intimacy with yourself when you're outsourcing somebody else to soothe your nervous system. Because those moments you actually get to fucking pause and say, "Oh my God, babe, you're so anxious right now. I'm going to be with you. Like, what can I do for you in this moment? What do you need from me?" We don't need to get anything from someone outside of ourselves. I'm going to be with you. I'm going to start teaching you that you are safe and whole and complete just on your own. And so it's like, yes, anxious and avoidance can come together and it can be a very beautiful healing process if both people are open to doing the work. And also, if you are like I would say if patterns keep coming up and you really want to be with this person, if it's where I was a couple years ago, where literally you were so anxious that your hair was falling out and you couldn't concentrate, like, girl, get the fuck out of there. Like, I wish, like, and it's like, and I get to have so much compassion with myself because that's where I was at a couple years ago. I needed to learn that lesson, and it was the biggest fucking lesson of my life, and I'm so thankful. Like, because that relationship, the breakup, I had a complete nervous system collapse after that. I learned so fucking much. I learned so much about myself. I learned so much about being able to trust myself because there were red flags along the entire way and I just kept not listening to them. So I learned about trusting myself. I learned about, oh, I get to be intimate with myself. Oh, I don't have to like outsource my own joy and happiness and soothing and nervous system regulation from my partners. Like, and so to go back to your question, yes, anxious and avoidance can come together if they're both willing to do the work. And what that looks like is like being honest about what your needs are. And then also being very honest about like, okay, do I need him to text me every morning? Or is that just me avoiding intimacy with myself and needing someone outside of myself to soothe this part of me that's anxious as fuck? And for avoidance, the biggest thing for avoidance is the because they didn't have because they were smothered, right? Or nobody was like available. A lot of times avoidance, their biggest downfall is they don't know how to negotiate. So
Mm,
it's either like, okay, I'm in or I'm out. Like there's
wow.
no negotiation tactic. So for avoidance, what I give them is practice negotiating. And also how do you know what to negotiate? You have to know what you need. So let's say for avoidance, you start to feel that like, oh, I need to get the fuck out of here. I need to exit. Like, where the fuck is the exit door? This girl is or this guy is coming on to me too hard. It's negotiating. Hey, I love you. I need 3 or 2 days to just be in my own energy and reset. And I'm gonna check in, but I need to be like in my own energy. Is that like? And you learn to negotiate. You learn to decide what you need, and then you follow through with your needs, and you actually commit to giving yourself those needs.
That's beautiful. I want to ask this, even though you've touched on some parts of it, but I think as a person who has friendships and has had friendships in the past, or maybe somebody in your family or whatever, you see
Yeah,
them in a relationship that is obviously not working for them. What
yeah.
is happening for them internally that they know better and they can't step away from something where the other person is not working on things? They're not going to work on things. All the signs are there that it's something that the person who's aware of it like needs to step out of. Is there any help from the outside that people can give them when they care about someone who's in, let's say, an abusive relationship or something else where it's like, what is happening internally for someone who's stuck in that kind of dynamic that they either can't see it or can't remove themselves from it?
Yeah, that is really hard, right? If it is physical abuse, you have to get the fuck out of there. Like, and it is very hard because a lot of the times people who are in physically abusive relationships are it's the reenactment. They were probably physically abused, not always, not always, but there was probably physical abuse or boundary violation abuse growing up.
Mhm.
And so they are reenacting that to then get the love that they didn't get to then feel worthy. And but with physical abuse, like you got to get out of there. It's really hard when you see a friend in a very unhealthy dynamic. Um, and I think the best thing that you can do is like invite them to go get help. Like not shaming them, but recognizing like it's almost treating it like a sickness and really giving them loving reflections. Cause a lot of the times, like, if somebody is being physically abused as a friend, like you're like, get the fuck out of there. And then you distance yourself because it's like, why the fuck aren't you just getting out of there? But it's almost like it is like a disease. It's a sickness. And that person definitely needs support. That person definitely needs professional help. If somebody's in a relationship that, and also like for like, I don't treat, if there's physical abuse, like I don't treat that couple,
Mm.
because for me that's a precondition that I don't fucking work with. And I would work with the woman or man separately, but the partner who's doing the abusing needs to go get actual fucking help, anger management, like domestic violence work, like, but I don't work with couples if that is going on. If and here's the thing, like emotional abuse is also something. If yelling is going on, if like getting big and like get pushing, like not pushing, but like, you know, getting big and getting up into somebody's face, like that is boundary violation shit. That's emotional abuse. And so that sort of thing. And when you see somebody who's stuck in this cycle, there's a lot that's going on for them. There's self-worth stuff, right? They don't have a healthy self-esteem. They think that there's a lot of like, because in the relationship that I was in, there was a lot of emotional abuse going on, right? When you're lying and manipulating and gaslighting someone, I know what that feels like. And for a solid 6 months, one of my best friends, she was like telling me, Rachel, get the fuck out of there. And I'm like, no, like this is, and I would be crying like almost every morning. And it was such a, like looking back on that, it's like, oh my God, like what an eye opener. Like to be able to go through something like that, to get on the other side and to learn all the lessons. I would say it's like, yeah, keep giving them those honest reflections and encourage them to get help. Encourage them to get help. And I would, it's also like it's a love addiction,
Hmm.
right? Like I am going to outsource my all of my esteem, my self-esteem, all of my love from someone outside of myself. And when that person goes away or is acting in a way that actually I'm not okay with, I'm just going to be there and I'm going to show up time and time again because there is a deep belief that I'm not worthy of anything better. That if I let this person go, then I'll be alone forever, right? This like deep, deep, deep fear of abandonment. And so that person needs to get professional help. I would say, yeah, like really help that friend try as hard as, right, as hard as you can. You can't force anyone to do anything. And sometimes people aren't ready to actually face those fears, right? But as a friend, if you love them to death, I would encourage them to really get some support because here's the thing, like we're not meant to do this shit alone. Like I would not be here where I am today by myself. There's no fucking way. Like I've had so many mentors, so many teachers help me on this journey. Like I've invested so much money in myself, working with people to try to like just literally like learn and reveal and come back to like who the fuck I am time and time again and to connect to this version of me that has healthy self-esteem, that is confident, that trusts in myself, like a very different version than who I was 6 years ago. And so it's, I would say that this sort of work is not just for people who are in unhealthy relationship dynamics. It is literally for everyone because we were never fucking taught how to be relational. And we are relational beings. Literally, it is all around us. Like the people that you interact, you don't like unless you get like fucking takeout and don't leave your apartment and like literally, I'm sure there's got to be people like that. But we are we're tribal beings. We're meant to live in communities. We're meant to be connected with other people, and yet nobody fucking taught us how to be relational. They taught us how to do algebra and like, and nobody fucking taught us the most important thing about being a human being is how to be relational with ourselves and how to be relational with others. And so I am like, I'm dedicating my life to helping people could have the best relationship with themselves and like to create these incredible environments where like relationality can happen. And there's all these tools that I teach my clients, but it's like before I teach my clients these tools, we also have to like get you in a space where you'll actually use these fucking tools, because these inner children in us, these adaptive child parts of us, won't fucking use these tools. These parts of us want to be like, literally, they're not relational. Like, they have all of these adaptive strategies that show up in relationships that are not supportive, right? And so, I don't know. I could go in like there's these like in every relationship, every person has these losing strategies, right? So if you're in a relationship and there is a trigger that happens, your adaptive child comes online, and then you go into a losing strategy, right? You go into control. You want to control your partner. You want them to get them to do something, being right, like not actually listening to what your partner is saying, but staying firm in just your viewpoint, which would fucking work if it's just you. But you also like are in a relationship with someone, right? And so you want to be open to exploring like, oh, well, what if I'm not right? And then unbridled self-expression, the thing about just expressing whatever the fuck that is on your mind without actually recognizing the impact that it's going to have on your partner. And so we have these like different losing strategies. And I know I'm getting a little bit sidetracked here, but yeah, but I am committed to helping people be relational and create the best relationships with themselves and each other.
Incredible. For someone who maybe is brand new to this work, if
Yeah.
any of this sounds overwhelming for them, what's
Yes.
a good way to dip your toe in? What is like the diet soda version of starting to do attachment work?
Yeah. I would say I would say work, like reach out and start to work with someone. I would say first things first, I would start to, if I like starting my, like if I was to start from scratch, number one, learning how to meditate. But that's like just a tiny, like that's a great foundation start, right? Learning how to meditate, just starting 2 minutes a day of just being aware of like your breath or thoughts, or learning a mantra, or counting your breath, or whatever it is. Like there's so many YouTube videos. I won't go into how to meditate, but I would say that that's like a foundational thing, because learning about learning presence, learning how to be in the observer seat of what the fuck is going on, right? Because our mind and our body are tools that we get to use. But we live in a society where shit is so fucking reversed. Like, I forget who said this. It was like the Dalai Lama, or was at a conference, and somebody was like, "What do you? How should I work with my intrusive thoughts or my critical thoughts?" And he like was like, "You let your mind do that?" Because we grew up in the US, where we were never taught how to literally tame these tools of our mind and body, right? And how to actually be with whatever is fucking coming up, right? And that's why meditation is so key and such a foundation of this work, is because you are training your mind that you are actually in charge, that you are the leader. And it's like, no, mind, like I'm actually, because when you first start meditating, and even this morning, it's like you want to reach for your phone, you want to check your email, you want to check your text, and or you want to get up and like you're like, oh, I've already meditated for 9 minutes. I bet it's like 9 minutes, and my timer hasn't gone off. So like, and you notice your mind is just fucking trying to negotiate with what you say, right? I'm just gonna do it for 3 minutes this morning, right? And so it's like getting a practice of being the leader of these tools, right? Stepping into the driver's seat of your life, recognizing that your mind and your body are literally tools that you get to use, but it's so flipped here, where your mind and body are actually, they're so powerful that they take over. And so many people, that's what living like unconsciously is when your mind and your body are actually in the driver's seat and you're like fucking blacked out unconscious in the back seat and you're just literally living your life based off of all those past programs that we talked about. So I would say for someone just starting off, learn how to meditate. Learn how to get into your body, like movement, right? Yoga, dancing, like working out, getting into your body, doing embodiment practices. And then slowing down, slowing the fuck down. Like anytime you have a trigger, like, right? But you don't notice that you're triggered until you're actually fucking aware of what is going on in your body. So it all ties back to like becoming the observer. And then once you learn how to become the observer, it's like, oh, I'm like triggered as fuck right now. And maybe that is, maybe you don't catch it, but maybe you're yelling at your partner. And the moment you recognize that you're yelling at your partner, it's like, oh, stop. Let me take a deep breath. Okay, like let me turn on my prefrontal cortex, the part of me that actually wants to be relational. And if I can't regulate myself, if I realize I'm so fucking pissed, I remove myself. I take a time out. I go for a walk. I ground into the present moment. I go put my feet on the earth, doing grounding practices, coming back to the present moment. And then also like this stuff is moment to moment work. It's moment to moment. It's like, if somebody's not texting you back and you're freaking the fuck out. Okay, if I know that this is moment to moment work, if I know that like, okay, I'm feeling this thing, then I get to like just figure out and practice being with it. I'm not trying to change it. I'm just teaching my body it's safe for me to feel anything that I'm feeling. It's safe. Emotions are just energy in motion and they're wanting to move through our body, right? And so it's not about changing the state. It's like, how can I be with this? How can I just teach my body it's safe for this energy to move through my body, and then my state changes when I choose to. But first and foremost, letting this energy just move through me. And I would say like finding someone who is fucking good.
Hmm.
Someone who is going to hold up a mirror and be super honest with you. Like for the 6 or 7 years I was in talk therapy, I mean, I felt like looking back on those years, I'm like, I wasted so much money for I literally could have been talking to a wall. Like, you know, don't get into talk therapy unless it is literally you've got to do it's like for me this is just my own personal stuff. Talk therapy I think keeps you in the story. It keeps you a victim of your reality instead of the co-creator, right? Every like when you're in talk therapy it's like, oh, this happened to me, this is all happening to me, there's nothing I can fucking do about it. Oh. And no, actually there are so many things you can do about it. Being with those emotions, letting that energy move through your body, and then practicing relationality. Like find someone who is fucking good at trauma work and inner child work and somatics and has like a whole fucking tool belt that they get to work with you on all of these things, right? It's all about just like creating that safety in your body, like telling your body like it's safe for you to be here, it's safe for you to take up space, it's safe for you to speak your truth, it's safe for you to be open to intimacy and to let somebody see you warts and flaws and all, because I'm lovable, like and really like knowing like I am worthy of the greatest fucking love, and I don't have to settle for Joe who's like being hot and cold, and I get to like really decide like what do I want and stick with that vision, and I get to co-create that with the universe instead of letting old patterns and paradigms dictate your future reality. Like no, I actually get to create from this present moment, deciding what I want in the future, and I get to pull that into the now and start taking active steps on co-creating the best fucking life that I want for myself.
Incredible. Rachel Cuthbert, if people want to work with you, they want to find more resources, where should they go?
They can send me a DM on Instagram. My handle is at Rachel Cuthbert. I've got a link tree on there that you can tap on the link, and I've got discovery calls open. And yeah, this is like my favorite fucking thing to do, and so I love working with all my clients, and I love like supporting people creating the best fucking life that they want.
Incredible. I will link all of that in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming onto the show today.
Thank you so much. This was so fun, and it was so good seeing you.
This was so fun. Thank you everybody for listening. Bye.